It's like the best country in the world, like it's the coolest country, in the view of the, like from what other people think around the world.
Do you think it's different here to how people think it is? Do you think they have
really, like the perception of New Zealand is totally different than what the reality is.
That's interesting, because that was a leading question, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I too share that view. People have a view that...
Yeah, when I speak to people in Sweden, I say, yeah, I studied design in New Zealand. That's first, design is quite cool itself.
Yeah.
And then New Zealand is like, just makes it even cooler, and people think like, wow.
Yeah.
Like that's like you can't do anything cool.
So do they think New Zealand's cool? Do you?
Yeah.
Or is it just because anywhere foreign?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anywhere foreign's cool. Like foreign beer is always cool.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's cool, and it's also because it has this element of nature and also technology. I mean, it's not some sort of Pacific island. It's cool as well, but I mean they got coconuts and beaches, and that's pretty much it. Whereas New Zealand's got a lot more to it.
So how do you think Swedes perceive New Zealand as a country? I'm asking you to make...
You don't know much. I don't think people know much about it, but they know that they got mountains, beaches, but also some culture, and they like this, the Maori culture. Yeah. And there's also, I mean, it's a developed country as well. So
that's cool. So how do you see New Zealand evolving? What will be different, similar in the future?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that so like you got like as a brand, like if you can, it's brilliant. Like and also a good thing with New Zealand compared to like say the US.
Yes.
I mean, brand America is in free fall and will be marked for years. Because of what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
And New Zealand hasn't got anything sort of that can be to their disadvantage in history. They haven't done anything wrong with it.
No.
And that I think is a really good possibility. Like they can really use that to become a major sort of player in diplomacy or whatever.
People have described it as the Switzerland of the South Pacific to me quite a lot. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, people are educated. You got sort of a democratic system and a welfare system that works quite all right. I mean, there's still issues, but still.
So you think it's got a lot of possibilities. Yeah. Where do you think that leads it in 20 years? Where do you think it's going to go?
Really depends, because I don't think New Zealand is realising the possibilities, and I don't think, like take the design sort of, nobody cares about design really. There's no design discussion going around in houses, and that's really different from Sweden, because everyone discusses design, and it has a lot more sort of, you discuss how you can design better parks and better. It's on a different level, more so sort of public level.
Yes, that's interesting.
Whereas here, design, if you talk about design, it's products, it's profit, it's...
that's interesting.
It has to be in the minds of the people. It's not
part of the culture in the way it is in Sweden.
Yeah. And I think it's similar sort of in a similar situation in Denmark as well.
Yes.
And sort of the Scandinavian...
Very much in the Nordic Scandinavian
I think that's got a lot to do with the strong sort of tradition of a welfare system and all that, and high taxes and so on.
And it may also be partly a function of the fact that, I'm just a very left field thought, but a lot of the Nordic countries, you are inside a lot by nature of the weather and the nature of the day length. Yeah. So your man-made environment becomes more important to you. Yeah. It's just an observation. So tell me about Generation C. What's your view of it? Is it real or not in your view? Or
I think there's something to it. I think it's wrong to say draw everyone under one line. I think now more than ever you have much more subcultures, and I think people can be part of different subcultures at the same time, but at the same time be part of the main sort of national identity.
I mean, by its very nature, and because I am interested in social phenomena, I'm not meaning to stereotype, meaning to understand at a deeper level. So, I mean, one of the things that you ask as, say, a social scientist is, does Generation C have a group identity? Does it see itself as an identity, even if in fact it may be expressed differently? It's
I
like
don't
in
think
the
they have
same
an
way
identity.
collective identity.
Yeah, I don't think there's a collective identity, but I think with the content part of it,
yes.
you might, it's sort of a common denominator, like
yes.
they have this in common, although they don't really sort of interact as a group as such.
That's interesting. Who are they in your own mind? What are they? What age are they? Is it an age thing, an attitudinal thing?
50-50.
Yeah. And what do you see in terms of age and attitude? What sort of attitudes do they have, and what sort of age do they have? Are they?
All right, attitudes.
Or behaviours?
Yeah, I wrote down some notes before I even sort of looked up on the internet. What
No, that's great. That's good. I'm glad you did that because it colours your thinking.
Yeah, I think one point was that they like to market themselves through consumption, and the consumers they appreciate a more narrative design rather than sort of the performance sort of focused design.
That's interesting. Can you give me an example of a product that you think they would appreciate as opposed to a product they would not like, to illustrate that? Say in terms of mobile phones or anything you think is illustrative.
Yeah, I think Ericsson and Nokia is good in that sense. Ericsson was more technology advanced, really, than Nokia.
Yes.
But it was an engineering company, whereas Nokia was more a lifestyle company where you could change the express on shelves.
Absolutely, yes.
Which Ericsson at the time just couldn't understand.
They couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So do you think Generation C relate more to Nokia or Ericsson?
Nokia.
Yeah.
Oh, Ericsson is catching up now with Sony and so on.
Yeah. But I mean, what that says to me is that your view would be that the Generation C are concerned about the possibility to express themselves in different ways.
Yeah, I think the expression is and also, but I thought first when I heard Generation C, I thought it was Generation Creative, like the creative generation.
Yes.
And people sort of, I think that's something you have to be sort of a bit cautious about because you have to sort of see who's creating.
Yes.
And by just sort of downloading a ringtone, you're not really creating anything. And I think that's the danger that people think they're creative, but in fact nothing happens. It's just that
they're just consuming.
Yeah.
I guess that the debate that's interesting around that is that, and I mentioned this to everyone, that in the Renaissance, a Renaissance man typically sought to realise his potential in the field of arts and sports. And that was socially normative. Now, not everybody could realise their potential. There were different levels of ability, etc., etc. So I'll just turn that off. But essentially, what there was normative pressure. There was social pressure for people to learn. I guess the question I have about Generation C is that I don't necessarily believe they're necessarily more creative or less creative than anyone else. I mean, that's just a function of genetics. I guess the question is whether or not there's normative pressure on Generation C to be seen to be creative, even if in fact they're talentless. I mean, you can't make these generalisations. All I'm saying is, in your view, your observations of the people, the group here, some of which are older and some of which are younger than you, do you think that creative pressure exists?
Yes, definitely.
Do you have brothers and sisters or people you know who are younger for whom you think it's even more the case or less the case?
I don't know. And also might not only be creative, because one thing with Generation C is that their parents really did a career hard out and were really successful. So I think Generation C is taking for granted that they will do a career as well.
Yes.
And they're very optimistic, but also very naive, I think.
Do you think you're Generation C? Do you feel you're Generation C?
Yeah, in the sense that I have a pressure. Like my mum works for UN, and my dad is successful as a consultant.
Yes.
And my sister's got all my parents and my sister's got a PhD in psychology. Yeah. So I feel a pressure to both sort of academically to sort of get an education, but also sort of career-wise. And money is like, I don't care about money. Like I don't have to make a lot of money, but it's sort of it would feel to be a little bit of a failure to sort of start working at a supermarket in a
So,
way.
so in what ways are your generation C and in what ways are you not in headlines? How do you think you are, and how do you, beyond the career stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, in the career,
You see yourself as creative? Do you see yourself as techno savvy?